Hey, you want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money. All in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. And when you want to take your conversations with fans to the next level, Q&A and polls are the best way to get them talking. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Best of all, it's totally free with no catch. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started today. Hey gang, welcome back to this week's episode of Ranching Reboot. The inspiration for this week's episode came from some questions some local ladies had that were passed on to me, so I decided to step up and give it a swing. The best guy I knew to answer a lot of those questions is my good friend, Matt Kleopfer. So Matt, thanks for joining us again. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you?
You know, I can't really complain. It's been a pretty good year. Could always use a little bit more moisture, but still grass is still holding out. Cows look good and looking good going into the winter.
And the market hasn't crashed yet. Totally.
Well, I mean, it's not great. I don't really know what anything's been selling for like lately, but I know it's not great. Fats are undervalued. Box beef is still sky high, and it's been in the news the last couple of weeks that, there's even food prices are going up, skyrocketing.
My produce, I've noticed, is pretty bad. Usually the most affordable stuff. It's been really high.
I think we're only seeing the beginning of the evil teeth of hyperinflation.
Yeah.
Like if you watch several economists, especially on YouTube, and most of them really not directly connected to the food system, but they're all guys that are either investing in like gold, silver, cryptocurrency, real estate. And about every third video, I've started to notice a trend. Like they're all like, hey, watch the price of food, watch the price of food. It used to be like, hey, watch lumber. And then it was, hey, watch commodities of like sheet metal and electronics and heating and cooling for construction. And now it's just all food every time. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens this winter because, when, you watch Arlen Suderman, who used to be former head of the USDA somehow, and he keeps triangulating all this stuff happening with our grain exports and harvest. Once all that grain's harvested and in, and then we know how much we have in reserves, this might be a pretty shaky winter. So,
and that's, gosh, like supply chain disruptions.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the big theme here. And, we've seen a lot of supply chain disruptions, microchips. We've seen it in the beef, we've seen it in the beef supply. Just trying to get parts for anything is a little bit difficult right now. So let's talk about, let's dive into some food security stuff and why food security is so important. And one of the things I really want to talk to you about, Matt, is like what you're doing with your kids and homeschooling. Why is it so important for food security?
Well, to be honest with you, we have kind of really rerouted the vision of our farm for the short term and making sure that we ourselves and our neighbors, we have enough food on hand. My kids, with our homeschool co-op, and all of our homeschoolers in our group are all kind of prepper minded, they all have large families. They all eat super healthy. They're all very connected to their immediate neighbors, their surroundings, and so, and I'm very close with our neighbors. We try to make sure that we, use food, as a ministry to reach out to them and make sure we have enough hands. So we do like food log mentally. We'll figure out, okay, how much food do we have on hand? Do we have enough food to feed our immediate 6 neighbors, and that really changed. I mean, we changed our freezer setup, our canning setup for this year, trying to think about, okay, in terms of calories, if we're going to try to store calories long term, what's going to go the furthest? So are we going to, try to waste time on canning applesauce, or are we going to try to do things like learning how to
last?
Yeah. So we did a bunch of dry goods storing. My wife got a hold of a really nice vacuum sealer. We did some Kevlar bags and sealed 5-gallon buckets, and we put off a bunch of dry goods. That type of food insurance, I can't tell you, like, I don't know, the thought goes through my mind where I watch people in highly densely populated areas, and I'm like, do you know how fast things go downhill if something does happen to that supply chain? Like, you listen to, stuff like 1 Second After, and basically it's the unraveling of society based on what things go first and what changes in the mentality of a human, where you go from completely civil society, like we've enjoyed our whole lifetimes, but just how fragile that illusion is with the absence of a few different things.
Like 3 days. Food shortages, it wouldn't even take 3 days before civil order starts to break down.
Okay, is that what it is? Wow.
It's very, very short. People think, oh, I've got enough food in my house to last me 7 days. Well, you might. But the average person is literally living meal to meal, day to day. I'm not even kidding. And especially in inner cities. I mean, it's so fragile, and it's so sad. Like,
because the grocery store, it's right there. It's on the way home. It's convenient.
A grocery store
delivered now. Yeah.
A grocery store is literally stocked for several hours. We're not even talking multiple days.
Oh, really?
Our little GN. How big's your town, Brian?
Medicine Lodge is I think we've got about 1,800 people, and we have a good independent, locally owned grocery store that just built a new building, and they're successful. And people complain that, their prices are a little high, but they do source what they can locally, and it's worth having it there just to support it, because it's not a Dillon's and it's not, it's not a Walmart.
Yeah, you're lucky.
Where are you based out of, Matt?
I'm from Fredonia, Kansas.
Okay.
We're lucky. We've got a little G&W here, and they don't quite source as many things locally like what you guys do, but we also have a little meat market in town and a few things to kind of fall back on. We do have I call it our graveyard stone, a Dollar General, because that's like how to signal if a town is dying, is if it has a Dollar General that's sucking the money from the middle and lower class and shipping it overseas. But we'll go on that rant a different day. Anyway, for food security, we've been helping people just learn the basics of canning and food prep and food storage. And we just planted our fall garden yesterday, actually. And how much space it really doesn't take to be able to grow your own food. And I'll tell you what, most parents, especially soccer moms that are on the go, really struggle with getting our kids to eat healthy. All three of us were probably raised in the age of convenience, where our parents were like, oh my gosh, everything's got to go quick, and look how easy this is, because the generation before that, everything was so inconvenient. But we crossed this bell curve where we compromised convenience for quality, and we saw our health go downhill in one generation, suffered for it drastically. Mm-hmm. So there is a bell curve of there. Okay, how can I do this smart and not waste a bunch of time? I don't weed my garden. I spend about a couple hours planting it. The water's all automated. I don't have time to go out there and mess with that. I roll out a big tarp, and no weeds can come up through it. Just the plants come up, and we harvest. We have one harvest for it. We did 400 pounds of cabbage, made our own sauerkraut.
Love those kind of sauerkraut. Mother-in-law has the best. Yes. So good.
So I don't know. There's just so many things that we as humans could be doing where we're just not put into a place yet. It's coming, but where we've all been consumers. We consume and eat and consume and consume and eat, but none of us have really had to be producers.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to change real quick. And I can't wait. I'm so excited because that's when we're going to really reclaim and take our health back into our own hands, I think. So what are your thoughts, Brian?
Well, I've got a lot of different directions that I want to go.
Right.
A lot of things I want to ask you.
All right, let's do it.
So there's we're kind of trying to do a little current events here. So here in my community, there's a lot of parents, a lot of mothers really upset the school board about COVID and mask mandates. And we don't really have to get into that. But what I want to know is what would you have to say to a group of moms that's grumpy with the school system that are thinking about starting their own faith-based homeschool co-op?
All right, so a little bit of my background. Back in 2017, I used to be a government school teacher. I shoveled poo in those trenches, okay? I was there. And you know what? I love the kids. And I like the idea of a community public school. But that's not what they are anymore. Those aren't the same schools that you and I grew up in high school. There's a completely different agenda. The standards of this, everybody's got to win thing has drug the standard of excellence down so far so that we can accommodate everybody and nobody feels like they're a loser in the grand scheme of education. Everybody gets to hop over the line of graduation just so our graduation rates look good. Meanwhile, you see towns like, Baltimore, where their graduation rate is 18 or 20%. I mean, it's crazy.
And probably most of their graduates, are illiterate or couldn't even pass a basic skills test.
We have never had a generation pass through like we do now in terms of complete disconnect from reality. I mean, yes, can't read, can't write, can't comprehend.
It feels intentional too. Like when you look at it and you step back and you're like, is this intentional? Like it's not, there's a bigger plan than just dumbing down of America, right? So that tinfoil hat, I'm definitely wearing it where all of these pieces are aligning that everyone has talked about. And now it's just like slapping us in the face.
I mean, I could grab my tinfoil hat too and say, yes, there is a conspiracy. Yeah. I don't know if there's a conspiracy so much as that there
or is it a convenience factor?
Some of it's an infectious philosophy and it's attractive.
Yeah, I like that.
And it's easy. It's easy to, it's easy to try to get some short-term benefit to make people feel good in the short term.
Oh yeah.
That's what we've replaced a lot of the hardship in life with is a short-term feel good, and we've taken a lot of the struggle out of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I will never, ever regret my decision of walking into my superintendent's job. And mind you, I loved what I did. I was very effective at it. I had a great classroom and a great following and reputation and teaching. I taught music and my bands were just killer. They knocked the roof off the place. But when I started homeschooling and all of a sudden my circle of influence went from thousands of people in the rural area and community that knew who I was to this stage of isolation, and I'm under my own roof, waging battles and slaying wars in my own house. And that influence suddenly became so isolated. I was like, okay, what things are important? And my wife and I really went around and around about this because I saw what happened in those public schools. It's like, are we really going to worry about math and reading and science and biology and ecology and chemistry and reading comp and all that stuff? Or are those going to be vehicles for me to teach soft skills like work ethic, respect, okay? Everything that the image of you, how you want your children to be. So I drew this board, and this was like the Kleopfer board of principles in our house. And, we made some house rules. We're like, okay, we're going to practice gratitude on days only ending in Y. We're not going to use the same mindset to solve problems that we use to create them. And there was like 7 or 8 different ones on there. And so we just started going to war with, okay, how can we learn how to be a good human being? And then we use math and biology and all that stuff to teach those principles. But because I know a lot of people that know math and biology, but they're just downright shitty human beings. And the variable was, well, what kind of grade can I get in those grades? But nobody wants to work with those people in the real world. And if you're a mom and you're thinking about homeschooling, I guarantee you start talking about doing it, and there's about 7 or 8 other moms and dads that go, you know what, I'll do it with you. Because that's exactly what I found. That we started a little homeschool co-op. We've got about 8 families. We just joined this morning out at the airport and taught the kids how to fly an airplane, and they got to go up with a local pilot. It's flexible. It's very inexpensive. I don't know if you know, but the government pays a public school, what is it, like $6,800 per kid per year to attend a public school. That's why those school secretaries
I thought it was way more than that.
Is it? That's like if they, yeah, you are right. I think I
thought it was like $16,000 or $18,000.
Yeah. Well, I remember the figure of, no, I think it's closer to 10, because I thought the figure of, if I homeschool my own 4 kids and the government paid me to do it, I could make $40,000 a year homeschooling.
Career. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's no way that'll happen. And there's no way I'd take the money, because I don't want them breathing down my neck and knocking on my door.
Controlling what you'd have to do.
Yeah. You can just keep your money. Okay. Go give it to the extremely inefficient public school system that are always going to cry for more funding. Schools are underfunded. No, they're inefficient.
Like, we could talk about, inefficiencies of federal spending, but, every time the government gets involved, they just want to throw more money at the problem, and quality goes down. We can think back to the George Bush era. When I was getting out of high school, and a lot of my friends were, getting ready to graduate college and whatnot, and they were like, "We're out of here. We want to be teachers." There's three of my really good friends wanted to be teachers, but they hated the No Child Left Behind Act. They didn't want anything to do with it. Didn't want to be a part of the education system in this country, so they went overseas to teach English as a primary language.
Really?
Yeah. And, so we start introducing all these standardized tests. Our test scores aren't as great as the rest of the world, so we need to spend more money. And it's like this ever increasing machine of diminishing returns. The madness has to stop. And I think part of the problem that we're getting into now, is we have a lot of local school boards, and they're supposed to be making all the decisions on how that school is run, with an asterisk.
Yeah.
Because they get so much money back from the federal government and the state, they've basically given up a lot of their control and a lot of the freedom on how to run a school district to the government. And the government is basically telling them, well, if you want to get more money from us in the future to repair your buildings or build a new sports ball field, you have to do this. And that really hamstrings the board. And, you turn your community members, your superintendents, and your school board members, they're like, yes, we know that this is right, but if we don't do this, we're not going to have enough money to even have a school next year. And that's kind of a hell of a position to put people in.
It's very unfortunate where communities have landed themselves, when it used to be the community could pool their funds together and support the school by themselves without even the state government contributing outside tax levy money. And you know what? It worked. And I'll tell you what, for those homeschool moms we spoke to earlier that are thinking about doing it, and you look at these individualized homeschool curriculums, all of our homeschool books are literally written pre-1920. You go back and look at the literacy and vocabulary of kids in late 1800s, and
it's
my
amazing.
word.
Yeah.
Like a 1920s fourth grader would kick a college graduate's ass right now.
Oh, hands down. I mean, I think if you Google that, what is it, 8th grade exit exam from Salina High School. It's on Google, but it's like from 1895, and it has like
hard.
Have you seen that? It's insane. It's like, well, what we've expanded to go, oh, look at us, we're so educated. Well, all we've really done over the mechanization, industrialization age is we've given all the computing power that used to be up here to machines. And we've replaced, oh my gosh, look at what humans can do. Well, look at what humans can't do anymore. Do you know that you look at what humans can't do? Well, when they get to be a certain age, what they can't do is go out and like make a lap around the store without having to sit down, or being able to compute math in their head because they didn't have a calculator. I'm sorry, but we're taking our schooling way back, and I'm thrilled to see what happens, because if you homeschool your kid and they know how to work, they can look somebody in the eye, they can shake their hand, they're going to have so many jobs thrown at them. They're not going to know what to do. But the biggest thing is they're going to have an entrepreneurial mind, and they're going to hire the kids to work for them that were public school kids that, don't know how to think for themselves and go out and have a dream and meet their goals. They're going to be somebody that works for somebody else and helps them meet their dreams and goals. And that to me is like, I don't know, both my parents are entrepreneurs, and you know what? Everybody around, and I'm sure your town's no different. Everybody is having such a hard time getting people to keep a job.
Oh, it's terrible. Like, I went to Home Depot and I knew what I needed, but I just needed a manager to sign off on it. It took an hour because they were so short staffed. And I was like, it's fine, I get it. Like, you guys just need like 500 more people. But it's everywhere, and you see the signs everywhere, and you're just like, it's just going to get worse and worse. We're going to have to become more self-sufficient.
We had a construction crew at our place pouring a pad for an add-on to our house. And I was talking to the construction guy about, he said he was so late. He was 3 months behind getting to our house because of not having help to do it. And, he brought his crew, and it was like, he was doing his best he could with a D+ crew, and I felt bad for him. But anyway, I was like, let's rewind, because he'd been doing this for like 35 years. I said, what did your crew look like 35 years ago? He goes, well, I tell you what, it took me 7 guys to help pour this pad and smooth it out today. 35 years ago, it was me and 2 other guys, and they worked for me for 20+ years until they started their own company. It takes twice as many men to do the manpower work of what it did 20 years ago. He said the manpower, the physical horsepower men have is just, they can't work long, tough, hard hours in the sun anymore. They tag out. So I don't know.
Why do you think that is, Matt? I know you've got a theory.
You bet I do. So in the, what is that? During the Nixon campaign, their head of USDA, I can't remember his name. I did a video on it not long ago when he did the Go Big or Go Home campaign for farms. All right. That was the beginning of the end for small town baseball, snot-nosed, helmet cracking football teams, because these little small farms started to dry up one by one. First the hog market crashed, and then it'd be commodity crops, and then it'd be cows, and every one of them that was a specialized farm would just see these dives, dairy, and they'd trade off which one would crash. And then all these farms started drying up, and then all these smaller communities started drying up. And that was really where work ethic among neighborhoods in our own country's resilience of being more independent, self-reliant, all that started to go away. And we put all our dependence in the middle for convenience. We compromised everything for convenience, and kids forgot how to work. And then we got into this age of just complete intellectual illusion and delusion. Like, look at how smart I am. Look at how much of a social justice warrior I am. Look at my, this skinny, frail model of a man that we put on TV and all these reality shows, and showed that to kids and go, this is what a man is, guys. and we put it in movies in Hollywood, and all these kids saw it and they watched it. And that was, I remember growing up, and like, you look at the skinny, frail guys that were on TV, and it was like every time you'd watch one of those reality TV shows, like, I loved Home Improvement and I loved Tim Allen, but it was always like the guy was always just kind of portrayed an idiot, a fool, a slob, and that mentality really bled into our society, that, the woman wears the pants and she makes all the decision, and the guy's just a fool and a slob, and he's not, that really demoralized the image of men in our society. And I tell you what, nowadays, in all of our faith-based stuff, we teach just hard-nosed, for men and women, the masculine, feminine roles, and why God made it so different. But those strengths that make us so different, like when we take on those roles as men or women, I mean, our family strength, our community strength, when women show their complete respect for men, and men show their complete love for women, those roles, when we take those on and really soak those in, man, you cannot break that down. You cannot sever that bond that a family has. And once we started slowly untying the strength that families had, man, our country is in shambles. That's my theory.
Okay. So out of the 8 families in your homeschool co-op, how do you handle teaching duties?
Each mom or family kind of has a specialty that they just really like. Like, I obviously teach music to all the kids. We have another lady, she used to run a preschool that she started. She does science. She loves science. Another mom, she does all of our outdoor sort of animal science, horticulture stuff. And we just sort of team tag. We use all of our different homes as kind of classrooms, and we try to pair up. We didn't do this as much last year, but this year our goal is we really want to try to pair up with as many community specialists, like welders and construction workers. And today was with a pilot, and just really get the kids sort of future minded about, acquiring a skill that they can make money at, so that when they're 18 years old, they've been working at this skill for several years. They can save up their own money, buy their own land, and just be very future minded. Instead of like having money to buy toys, it's like having money to, like, own land, build a house, start a family. That is, I'll tell you what, that's the most dangerous mindset our government would ever want to keep from a kid, is like, hey, go blow all of the money you haven't earned yet on student loans in college, but I don't know.
So, little side note here, there's a young man in my life I've been acquainted with for, I don't know, 12, 15 years. And he was a homeschool kid, and he worked in a restaurant. And because of his experience working in the restaurant, being homeschooled, he got offered a job as an electrician at 16.
Wow.
Like with a big company that serves the whole western half of the state. Okay.
Wow.
At 20, he was overseeing the construction of a new jail, of a new county jail up in Northwest Kansas at 20. He's since left that job after they paid for all of his school, all of his training, found a higher paying job. He's home more. And the kid's 23. He owns 2 houses, 3 pickups. Everything's paid for. Like, he's always showing me the cool guns that he bought. We were just talking last night. He's saving up for another pair of night vision goggles. Doesn't have a student loan bill.
See,
at all. Never even thought about it.
That's the kind of stories that make me a very happy man. Hearing that.
I guess I should add my story. So my husband was homeschooled. He's a veterinarian now. We just finished veterinary school, or he did. The oldest went to West Point and is a major in the Army. Sister has her master's degree. They're all very self-sufficient. They can do any kind of construction job. They can do any kind of electrical working. They have, I think Matthew has his mechanical engineering degree, and he basically renovated my whole house for me. So that was really nice, not having to outsource that. It's just amazing the life skills that they have, and also the success that they have, because there is that stigma about homeschoolers, because even when my husband meets new people and they find out he was homeschooled, they're like, I had no idea. Like, aren't you supposed to be some freak weirdo who can't socialize? And it's like, no, dude, we're better than you, to be honest. Not we are, but he is. Yeah.
Society did such a good job at painting that stigma of homeschool kids because they're unsocialized. Okay, they're unsocialized because look at what we're doing in public schools, where we're isolating these kids. And for the first time in human history, we're having kids use kids as their role models rather than, the elders of the tribe or the society. Yeah. Kids looking up to other kids was the most destructive thing we ever did, I think, in our own society, where, what are you trying to do? Like, when you're rubbing shoulder to shoulder with that, well, you completely screw up your whole paradigm of maturation, of trying to compare yourself with these extremely fake variables. Whereas when you use the adult, you're like, oh, I respect that man because of how honest he is, or because of how hard a worker he is. These completely different qualities that most kids don't look up to other kids for. And then they end up being adults with that same mindset, very destructive. And I remember when I was teaching government school, the only reason why I became curious about homeschool was I had 2 homeschool kids come into my classroom that wanted to play music, and the public school let them, and they blew my roof off. I mean, they shook my hand and looked me in the eye and asked me if I needed help, and helped clean my band room up. I was like, what is wrong with you kids? And then I started talking to their moms and dads and be like, I need to know what y'all do, because this is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I went to a homeschool group and watched with it. I went home that night, told my wife, I was like, babe, we need a homeschool. And she's like, you're crazy. We're not doing that. And then I took her and showed her what was going on. And she was like, okay, let's try it. And then I quit my job, and everybody thinks you're crazy when you say that's what you're going to do. They look at you like.
That's like the whole theme of this podcast.
you gonna homeschool? You're going to ruin your kids. Oh, okay.
They're gonna grow up weird. They're never gonna have any friends.
Look,
Joel has 3 job offers, and they're all fighting for him right now. It's actually such a fun problem to have, is to see all the hard work that he's done come together.
If that's what we want to call weird, then yes, my kids are going to be weird. They are going to be different, and it's going to be the best weird and the best different you've ever seen in your life. So here we go, and just do it.
I mean, if being weird is kind of like starting to get conflated with being a good human, and being honest and looking people in the eye, and having our 12 and 13-year-old children know how to interact with an adult in a professional situation. Like,
it is beautiful. Oh, that is, I don't know. I love weird kids, if that's what they are. I think that's the coolest thing ever. And I'll tell you what, COVID was the best thing that ever happened for homeschooling, because so many parents woke up to what was going on in their local public schools, and they're like, yep, I'm not doing this anymore. We're out. And every little mask mandate that comes in, more and more parents go, all right, that's it. Enough's enough. We're not doing this anymore. And they just figure out a way to make it work. And you know what? It is hard, and it does suck, and it is a challenge, and it's the best fight you're ever going to fight. It is difficult. I'm not going to lie, but you won't regret it.
So let's talk about maybe some of the lessons learned over the last year and a half of your homeschool co-op adventure. Like, what have been some things that you wish you would have known when you started down this path? And, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah. So I think the worst thing that I had in my mind as a former teacher was like this idea that I knew how to teach. And when you're teaching your own kids, you got to erase that real quick. And when you totally change the values and the why of what you're doing, I really, I did a really good job at trying to stick to this just schedule, and we're going to do this, and we're going to make sure we get all the way through this book. And there's just days where you wake up and your kid is just not there, and you cannot be afraid to deviate from the schedule, change the environment. Like, you know what, we need a mental health day. We're going to go outside and we're going to learn how to launch paper, or like build an airplane and launch it off the side of this hill. Okay, let's leave this workbook in here. Don't do homeschooling to try and mimic public school at home.
No,
that's not the best. You're not really accessing the best parts of homeschool. Like, I love giving my kids freedom to, we do have several, basic skills stuff we do out of books, but I want them to go outside and do it in nature. There is so much great research that, when your kids go outside, they're in the sunlight, they're hearing the sounds of, birds and bugs and everything, and they're doing it sitting under a tree. Like, their brain there's so much more of their prefrontal cortex with neurological activity than what they are sitting in a room under fluorescent lights. The other thing is that as the sun changes and the seasons change and it's lighter and darker out, change up your schedule of time and when you do it. Like, if it's cold outside in the morning, do your homeschool stuff and then go outside and play. And then in the summertime, when it's cool in the mornings, go outside and play in the morning. And when it's hot as balls out, come inside and do your work in the afternoon. Like, you got to play to the elements a little bit, but the biggest thing is making sure you're getting outside, making sure your time, when we were kids, we still had recess. Kids don't get that anymore. Like that time of rough.
Really? They don't get it anymore?
Hardly ever. They're so worried about their test scores so they can get more government money.
And some of the kids might get hurt, and they don't want kids to get made fun of because they're overweight and can't participate or can't run as fast. Or
it's a rough go. But the biggest thing for us as parents, especially as dads, is like, get in the grass and wrestle and rough and tumble with your kids. You ever watched an animal, especially dogs, do this all the time? Like, they will play fight with their kids. You'll see them, like they're biting them on the neck, but they're not really doing that. They're teaching them self-defense. They're teaching them spatial awareness. They're teaching them, like, there's a really great psychologist that talked about wrestling with your kids and really getting them to feel the pain of, contortion and self-defense every day. I'm not talking like beating your kids up. I'm talking like rough tumble playing with them in an environment where they have to push back a little bit. That is so huge for brain development, muscle skeletal development. It just really, you've seen the 15-year-old kid that's just so physically awkward. Like, their feet are this big and they don't know really how to, like, they aren't really fully aware that their arm is actually this long.
I feel personally attacked, Matthew.
Dude, you're a lot less physically awkward than what I'm talking about. This is not you. I'm talking like,
maybe when you were a kid, though.
Yeah. Well, I think so much of that has to do with us when we're little or younger, not being able to wrestle. Like, if you were to do that in public school, you'd get taken to the principal's office. If you were to wrestle on the playground, we just weren't allowed to do that much when we were kids. Man, you let kids wrestle with you as even 5, 6. Both my sons, they love to wrestle. It completely changes how kids interact with each other. You heard stories like kids in the 50s and 60s, how they'd like slug it out on the playground, and then they'd get up and shake each other's hand. Well, and then kids don't do that. What do? They take a gun to their school and try and settle it because they don't understand how to settle.
Conflict resolution.
Yeah. It's like, oh man.
They learn conflict resolution from Call of Duty, not from Dad.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that might be the best line on this whole podcast. Number 1 rule: no video games. Play life as reality.
Okay, I have to share a funny story. So Joel and I were checking out the grocery store last week. It was like 9:30 at night. Like, we were just running errands really last minute, and the guy before us goes, "I'm either going to go to the bar or I'm going to go home and play videos so my wife doesn't get mad at me for being like in her business. And I looked at Joel and I was like, I am just so thankful that you're my husband.
Man, you'd be surprised. Even they're like,
he was like 40 years old. And I was like, that's what you're gonna, I mean, I get it. People play video games, but I just bar video games. Those are your two options.
Not great options.
Not great options. Not somebody I would ever let my wife or my daughter marry. Because we talk about that a lot with me and my kids. Of like, what do you want your husband to be like? What do you want your wife to be like, boys? And you know what? That's the other cool thing is we do a lot of stuff where say, boys, you do this, and I'll let you take mom out for a date, and she'll take him out, to breakfast or something like that. And they have to like open the door, and they have a chance to earn money on our farm, but they use that money to pay for their date with mom. And I take the girls out for dates and stuff like that, where it's like I'm teaching them how to be the man that they are going to marry someday. That's my biggest goal is like, I don't want you to just go out in society and settle for somebody that's good looking or maybe has a bunch of money. Like, are they a man or are they a woman, that is just going to absolutely adore who you are? There aren't many of those out there.
I've seen a lot of memes going around, the last 6-9 months of, girls in 2018. Oh, I want a man that looks good in skinny jeans and, blah, blah, blah. And the same girls in 2021 are like, I want a man that can hunt a deer and run a homestead and live off grid.
Yeah.
There's just been such a big shift, like the one I saw this morning was, back in the 50s and 60s, all their parents on the farm were like, oh, you need to go into town where there's people and there's opportunities. And everybody now it's like, I just want to get out away from people out in the country and learn to grow my own food. And, like we talked about a few minutes ago with the Nixon administration. And it was, like I said, I have a hard time seeing a conspiracy because all this is unfolded over such a large time scale, right?
Yep.
So it's got to be more like, this stupid
consequences.
This terrible philosophy about how we should be living our lives has infected so many people, and they're all, making these decisions that are just driving us in one direction collectively. But it's not like I just can't see a conscious conspiracy going on.
I guess the reason I feel that way is because I'm like, are people really like that dumb? Like, are they really not able to use logic?
Yes. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, look at human history. When you put large amounts of humans together, those groups are very dumb. But when you space out the humans, that's when the mind becomes more primal. When you put a lot of human minds together, that group is very dumb. But man, I'll tell you what, like look at ancient Rome and read the stories of, all of the falls of different human civilizations. All we're doing is repeating history. That's all this is. Yes. This is the fourth season of the fourth turning. This is the season we're in right now is winter, and it's getting ready to be very, very ugly. It's a season of revolution that is upon us. Great book, by the way, the fourth turning.
The fourth turning of the big wheel of the second age of, yeah. So I guess we can kind of sidetrack here. What are some of the signs you're looking for that, that we're close to the apocalypse or revelation or, the end of civilized society in the Western world or the end of oil or industrialized society? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, if you do it by the numbers, like I'm not really weighing to see, are we there? We are there. It is here. Look at a nation, society, they all go on 250-year cycles and have throughout human history for a long time. And 1776, 2020, we're there. It's here. Okay. There's not any guess as to, okay, is our nation in a state of reformation and revolution and major change? Yes, it is. And so what the biggest thing for us is, number one, food security, making sure that we do as many things as we can to exercise our liberty. That is our freedom to be able to do what it is we want to do, without having to be dependent on all the different systems, the healthcare system, the education system, the food system, the transportation system, the electrical system, all of that. But you don't really have to be a tinfoil hat prepper to just be like, you know what, I'm going to keep a gas barrel on hand. I'm gonna make sure that our heating and cooling for our house is able to be used without electricity. We got some wood stoves, and we've done it in a way that makes it look very, tasteful and modern and new age. It doesn't look like you're living in a log cabin with what is that book, whatever on the prairie.
Anyway,
Little
House on the Prairie.
Little House on the Prairie. My kids were just at that yesterday. I'm surprised it blanked my mind. Anyway, doing things to make just being well thought out of not having any dependence on the outside world for even our forms of entertainment. We don't own a TV. My kids don't even know what a commercial is. Like after dinner's over, we literally have people over to our house for dinner 4 out of the 5 weeknights a week. We're very blessed to have a very diverse social circle that we cook for. When dinner's over, we go into the living area, we get our guitars, mandolins, and fiddles off the wall. We start playing bluegrass. My daughter, she's 9. She plays fiddle, and we sit there and talk about books, and we talk about, human culture and different things. And my kids are listening to other adults. That's what we talked about earlier. Like kids listening to other kids. Well, that was the worst thing we as a society did, was hire out the education and maturation for our kids to an expert with a degree in teaching. Well, all they're doing is really overseeing those kids look up to other kids. But we've already talked about that. Anyway, as far as like the variables in society to watch, like the crashing down of the house of cards. Okay, so the stock market, there's something that was very interesting about Black Tuesday back in the 20s when that stock market crashed. And there's a story that I understand called the Shoe Shine Boy story. And what happened was one of the major stock investors, I don't remember if it was JP Morgan or one of those guys, was leaving Wall Street. And it's almost like it was now, like money was super cheap and people were borrowing money to borrow money to borrow money. Okay. And he was walking down the street and he walked up to a shoe shine boy on the corner of Wall Street and something else. And he paid the boy to shine his shoes. And the boy gave him stock advice. And it sent the hairs on his neck that he was standing on a corner taking stock market advice from a little kid. He walked back to the stock market and sold everything he had. He sold out right there. That was on Monday. The next day, that market had crashed. It was the beginning of that major decline that took 2 or 3 months. But that Black Tuesday, when the stock market made that initial giant drop, it's like, look at the signs around you and people telling you what to do with your money. Okay. Look at what happened to the petrodollar over in Russia and China. People are bailing on the dollar like crazy. And your prices of where else to put your stock, like cryptocurrency, gold and silver, and you watch those prices fluctuate a little bit. It's just really obvious. Or the price of real estate in your area. Doing things to absolutely diversify where you have your money right now is so crucial, because obviously if the dollar goes, the rest of them are going to take a hit too. But to this point, it's which of those is the lesser evil, which one is going to fall the least. Bonds or gold or silver, or I mean, a safe investment right now is passive income such as real estate. But if it gets super bad and people can't even pay their rent, or people don't even have the money,
that's what I think about. Yeah, is this moratorium?
Like, that we just don't know. The biggest thing is making sure your bases are covered with your own household and food. And I make an analogy in a lot of my videos of like, did you play baseball as a kid, Brian?
Oh, I played t-ball for like 5 games. It's not my thing.
Did you play softball or anything?
I played softball. I was a catcher. Yeah.
So like I used to pitch, and when the coach decided I'd had enough, he'd let me go out to left field. And I remember standing out in left field because I just remember standing on the mound, and I could sort of tell from the outfield, watching the angle of the bat and how the batter was standing and how the pitcher was throwing and what pitch I knew was coming. I could almost telegraph where that ball was going to go, and I would position myself I would get a jump on it. I would take off sprinting in a direction that I thought the ball was going to go, and people would look at me crazy. But that jump, that extra step and a half was the difference between a base hit and an out. And in this situation where you're standing out there in the outfield and you're shifting your feet, shifting your weight from foot to foot because of where you can tell that ball is going to go in human civilization, and you get that extra step or that extra, jump on everybody else. That's the difference between life and death in a place where, human civility completely crashes and the illusion of a civil society is completely gone within days. Yeah. That step is huge. And most people are they're just standing there literally thumbing their nose in the outfield, picking bugs off their crotch, and just are not completely aware there's even a ball game going on. So right. I would say probably you and I and your audience are probably all the people that are going to have a jump on everybody else. But the biggest thing is just stay flexible and try not to tie yourself down with crazy obligations that allow you to be, mobile, flexible. Just remember, warriors always travel light. That's the biggest thing. So
you say warriors travel light. Warriors worry about logistics.
Yes.
Fighters fight, warriors worry about logistics. So thinking about logistics, the most important, the three most important things: food, water, shelter. Most of us have the whole shelter bit covered. Water, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. So here we are, we're like knocking on the doorstep of fall. Fall's just going to be a few days away when we release this episode. Past time to plant much of a garden. So what can we do today, or as you're listening to this, how can we start preparing for further supply chain disruptions and improve our food security for the next 12 to 18 months? Where do we start?
Biggest thing is I would go find any farmer right now and go, do you have an animal I could buy in a situation that, say, things go down, and do you have the ability to process it in a way like, do you have an old hand crank meat grinder in your basement you could dust off and put in some man sweat hours and grind that sucker up and put it in bags and get it in the freezer? You'll be so surprised how primitive the tools are. I remember butchering my first steer, and I was like, I want to do this in sweat. I want to do this as primitive as I possibly can. I had a gun, I had a steel bar, I had a sharp knife, and I had a hand crank meat grinder that I cheated. I put a pulley on it with an electric motor. And you know what, man, we did the first one like that, and I was like, this is awesome. And then I got a meat saw, and I was able to, hand cut some pork chops when we did a few pigs, and being able to have protein in a time of extreme stress. That's the difference. Like when the plague or the pandemic hit in 1918, a lot of those people that succumbed to that Spanish flu were the people that were very malnourished. A lot of them did not have good protein sources, and keeping yourself healthy, especially in the COVID age, that's huge. Making sure that you have enough supplements and vitamins. Vitamin D is a huge one. My wife, she's in the healthcare system, and we really work hard on making sure that our bodies are in absolute tip-top fighting shape, making sure that we have several months supply of various other medicines, supplements, herbs. It's huge. Health is everything in a time like this. I forgot what else I was going with that.
Oh, what about birds, though? Don't you think chickens might be, or poultry might be easier for people who aren't familiar with raising livestock? Because you could feed them like table scraps and
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and for that matter, I think rabbits, like for the space they take up and the conversion rate from dry matter to edible protein, rabbits are like,
that's
very
good. True.
Rabbits are definitely the hands down winner.
I love rabbits too.
Easy, sustainable protein source. Your Cornish cross Franken chickens are a close second. The worst part about, if you're going to try to buy a baby calf and raise it up, you're looking at a really long turnaround for that. But I'm saying, like, if you need food now, go out in the country, go buy a farmer and go give him a hug and pay him more than what that cow's worth, and take it home and put a bullet in its head and sharpen your knife and just go to town. Get some buddies together, get a case of beer, and go.
All right, a lot guys, easier than you think.
It is.
An animal. Follow the fat thing.
How fast we can go back to those primal human values of like, let's butcher this animal together, guys. And everyone, let's do it.
Yeah, and this time of year, a lot of us ranchers, we're just coming out of preg check. We got open cows that we got to do something with. And I think one of the best uses for an old open cow is you just take her, lop her head off, and throw the whole thing in the grinder.
Boom, baby. That's right.
And if you're listening to this, go find somebody that's got an old open cow, offer them $1,000 for it to take it off their hands, take it home, string it up in the yard, and process it right there. And it's not hard to do, is it, Matt?
It's not, and I listen to a lot of primitive meat smiths and stuff where they don't even use coolers. Like, they'll do it in a time of the year where you can string it up for 7 days outside.
Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, it might take you 4 or 5 guys and a good solid chain and a good heavy tree to get that animal up there. But you know what? Nothing's going to bother it. Nothing's going to hurt as long as you keep the cats away or the coons.
Well, that's what they do with the elk, right? Because sometimes they can't pack it out. So they'll quarter it up and then hide it up in the trees. And then they'll come back with the right equipment to pack it out. Right. So
yeah,
the whole point of hanging too is just so that the meat is more tender, right? So you don't even have to really hang it, or am I wrong?
No, you don't. You really don't. I mean, all you're really doing is letting those very first enzymes in Mother Nature really start to lightly caress and decompose the meat at a very gentle
way. Dry aging. Yeah.
And I'd say definitely make sure you have plenty of salt if you want to cure your own beef and pork and stuff like that. Because we've done that. To where if we don't have refrigeration, I cured out a whole pig one time.
Yeah.
And some of that sucker's still hanging in my basement and hasn't been refrigerated for over 1.5 years. And that meat is still good yet. I mean, there's bacon's hanging down there. Some of my buddies like Zach Bell and Ethan Walker, they've got hams and bacons and different other cuts hanging in their basement that are multiple years old. And we still, whenever we get together, we'll cut a hunk off and crack open a good handmade beer and eat them up, man. It is the most delicious food you've ever had in your life.
So last year in the middle of the pandemic, I bought a survival seed packet because I was I was living in Kansas at the time, so we weren't near any family. The closest we would have gone to Brian's if something had happened. But I bought survival seeds just to have them, and it's just a reassurance that I'll have them in my seed library. And then I also bought a book. It's called Self-Sufficiency on a Quarter of an Acre. And it's an amazing book for harvesting game birds and just how to grow these different types of forages or produce on a really small size parcel. And it's almost like backyard gardening, right? So I think there's resources you can always have on hand too, just in case you want to be prepared.
Yeah, the biggest and best for those, in my opinion, and I love books and I love videos and DVDs, but that is your immediate prepper circle of influence. Who is it that you can call on that Saturday that I got an animal, let's do it. Okay, I'll be there. Those guys that when you call them, their reply is always going to be, okay, I'll be there. That circle of influence in a situation, who is your gang? Who are the guys that you call? that is important. Most people don't have that circle,
right,
which is unfortunate, but that to me is the best asset you can have, is a
so that's
circle
a
of people.
challenge to our listeners to build that circle if you don't have it.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing about having online circles, social influence. I mean, some of it is kind of fake, where you think somebody's your friend, or you think somebody knows what they're doing. Yeah. But get together. Like, we're having a giant, hey, I'm going to invite the whole Red Hills Rancher gang. We're having a giant event at our farm on next Saturday night on September 25th. My family's playing gospel bluegrass. It's called Hymns on the Hill. We did it last year. We had 250 people in our backyard sitting on hay bales, sitting here singing gospel hymns. And we've got food for 500 people. We're just opening it up free to the community to come out and enjoy. And all of you are welcome if you want to come. It's in Fredonia, Kansas. That doing things like that to really open up your circle for people to go, oh my gosh, look at what this guy has going on. And some of you have that state of fear of like, well, if crap really does hit the fan and everybody knows what I have, they're all going to come beating on my doors to try and, well, I'm telling you what, if stuff really does hit the fan, we're not going to be like right here. We've got places way in the hills and you're not going to find us, but we're going to make sure that our neighbors and everybody is taken care of. Like, I'm never going to put my family in a vulnerable position to where, if we need to take care of ourselves and this is going to last a whole lot longer than what we think it will, we're going to be bug out, have your bug out bag packed. But regardless, do things and have events and discussions, like have a farmers mental health night where you invite out all the local ranchers and farmers and be like, hey, I just wanted to get everybody together and just pump everybody up and let everybody know how needed and how much of value you are to this community and how much you are appreciated, and cook them all burgers, or do the same thing with law enforcement, have them all out to your house. I just wanted to have a dinner or a night where I have you guys out, and I just want to have people hear the stories of what's going on the county roads in our county, and invite people from the community. Just tell us what's going on. And you would be so surprised how much people's jaws drop when they hear what is going on at night when they're asleep and these police are out there dealing with, meth head bangers. Or it causes people to stop and pause and reflect and put their video games down and want to get active in taking back their communities.
Right.
But it can't happen unless they have a place or a platform to hear other people speak. And online just doesn't do it. It's got to be in person. It's got to be genuine. You got to have some food there, a place where people can sit down and look at somebody's face without a mask over the front of it. That is what changes the human perception. And I love using our farm as a place for people to gather and meet and go, okay, our country's under attack. Let's freaking get the colors flying high and do something about it. Like, this is a rally. Harmony Hill is a rally point for our community to go, let's go out to Harmony Hill and let's hear something real, and all of us can do that with our own homes or farms or whatever it may be.
And you caught me without another question ready. It's just listening to you and eating it up, man. It's good stuff. So is there a way out? Like, is there a way out for our society, our civilization, to keep it shit together and keep functioning without collapse over the next 18 months?
I think having your people in your small town, letting them know that, you know what, Brian Alexander is for real. That dude is not jacking around. When somebody knows stuff's happening, you're going to be the person that they call to go, all right, what are we as a community going to do when our government says, all right, all healthcare workers got to take the jab, and, everything, the hospital's shutting down because it doesn't have enough nurses to take care of people, and stuff's really starting to unbuckle. Okay, that's when men and women of a community stand up and go, okay, we're taking this into our own hands. And it doesn't matter. Some of your community may not be on board. Okay, go row your boat to a different shore. This is what we're doing. And you bury that flag in the sand, and you base it on the principles that our Constitution was written on. And you make sure that you have your sources of food lined out. You gather up people and go, what can you do? What can you do? What can you do? And just really make sure that everything is organized to a point where you really identify who the leeches are, like the ones that are just there to consume. Like, no, everybody's here to produce. Everybody now has a job. If you're unemployed, you're now employed. You have a job, you're going to do something to contribute, period. Nobody's just going to sit there and get spoon fed. It doesn't matter if you are completely immobile, you're going to help read books to a kid. You're going to do, there is something that you can do. You got to change your mindset. Well, what can I do to help? That's the number one question I want my kids to ask in every situation. What can I do to help? What can I do to help? Changing that circle in your community to be able to do that. And most of our small Kansas towns are going to be like that anyway. But man, think about what this would be like in Johnson County or in Sedgwick County or in Shawnee County up in Topeka. I mean, there's going to be none of that.
Could move mountains, change the world.
Well, I'm just saying, like, that circle is just so big. It would be so hard to organize a how-to, because none of the people in that town know how to produce anything of value or worth to help take care of people. They're all completely dependent and compromised in that environment.
Why is that? Just big urban areas, or I'm not familiar.
Say that again.
What are those counties? Are they big urban areas, or is that why?
Topeka, Wichita, and Kansas City.
Okay. And that's what Shawnee and Johnson County are? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's like, okay, we need protection. We who has guns and ammo, who has nurturing abilities for children to help do that, while obviously the men are out wanting to make sure that we have everything protected. That is where we reassume our primal roles as humans and just jump right back into 1776. And it's like, oh, it's a do-over. Like, if you read the book, this is a cool part about that book. The Fourth Turning is like, our generation, the age that all of us are, like, we are literally the equivalent to the generation, if this cycle plays out, and it has many times, like, we're literally the generation that wrote the Constitution in the next cycle. Like, we are the Thomas Jeffersons, the George Washingtons, the Ben Franklins, the John Adams, like that's literally us. But they were just in the cycle before us. So I'm telling you what, the ones that are really rattling trees right now are all the people that are our age.
And there's a lot of trees that need to be rattled. A lot of them need to be shaken. And there's even a whole bunch of them that need to be cut down because they got killed by beetles.
I know. Or they're just on fire.
Or it's all on fire.
That's right. That's how California is burning, because of needed to get the fuel out, do some agroforestry. So
that might change, but the recalls didn't do anything. So whatever.
Yeah. I have a feeling there was some shenanigans going on in that deal. So
yeah,
it seemed like there was a whole bunch of people that voted no, they didn't want to recall them, and that didn't bother to put anything else out on their ballot. I don't know. Some of the counts looked a little bit weird, but yeah, we don't have to get into electronic voting and how much that can be screwed with. So something's bothering me a little bit, Matt. And I have trouble reconciling this myself about, the traditional gender roles of men and women in relation to agriculture. And we're trying to square these ideas with, I guess, equality between the genders. And I guess there's a sexism aspect in there to it too, because we don't necessarily want to go back to like the 50s housewife or, the 20s farm wife. That's not what we're talking about. But I think what we're talking about is more defined roles for the genders, but not necessarily being constrained by those roles, but at least having, defined, there's some kind of structure. Women are better at some things, men are better at some things. And that's, we're all the same. We're just made out of the same parts, just assembled a little bit differently. So what do you have to say about that, Matt?
Well, here's the crazy part about this. Like, I am obviously a full-blooded male, no questions about it. But I do historically the job that a woman would have done. Like, I do my family's laundry, I homeschool the kids, I stay at home with the children, I do what, 100 years ago, a man would have never done any one of those three things. And my wife is the one that she has the job and goes out, does that, makes money, and comes home. And I have what used to be the wife did, and I am the one that prepares the food. And so for my man ego, changing that psychological role or stereotype that our society would have been like, hey, did you know you're doing a woman's job? Like, no, I'm doing a human's job. And I reassign that, especially for the men in this world, where it's like the man that was almost stereotyped of like, I have nothing to do with my children, I go out and I do the man thing, and then when I come home, my wife serves me and puts rose petals on the floor as I walk in the house, and I sit down in the chair and turn on TV, and she cleans the house for me. And that that stereotype was so demoralizing for women, because
and we all agree that that's just not cool.
That's just not cool. No, not even close. But I will say that there was also a bell curve where the man's primal urge is to want to do anything that we can to render respect out of our house. Like, our love language as men is respect. When our wives respect us, we do everything in our power to make sure that she is protected, she is nurtured, she is loved. And our wives' love language is love. I mean, it is us, being affectionate and showing that we are totally switched on to what her needs are. And those all got crisscrossed where, when women were really allowed to do whatever it is they wanted to, it really came at the expense of men were very disrespected in that time. And women became very independent. I can do what I want and I don't need the help of no man to do it. Well, primally, women really like to know that they are protected, and men really like to protect women. They really do. Yes, there was some, awful abuse things, but I think a lot of that stuff happened when we really quit giving a lot of face value to how we as different sexes perceive and metabolize love from the opposite sex. And and even in the own house, like, men and women really quit showing their affection even in front of their own kids. Like, they just wouldn't hug or kiss each other at home, and while their kids were watching, they'd watch this really messed up, skewed version of a disjunct family on the TV, but they never really got to see what a fully functional mom and dad operated like in the house, because everybody was on the go and nobody really got time to sit around the dinner table and talk about these things. And so they got their view of reality from whatever TV show they were watching. And that was what they thought, well, if I'm a man, that's what a man's like on TV. So that's going to be what I am. And yeah, that's my thought on that.
And where, so you just kind of described like the typical suburban household, man, wife, couple kids, maybe a dog, probably a cat. They're in public school all day. And then after school, there's always after school activities. There's sports games. And, those kids spend all their time around the teachers, the school staff, other kids, and the coaches. But they don't spend a lot of time with their parents. They don't get to see that functional man and woman coexisting to share common goals and common dreams. They don't get to see that dynamic and how that functions. And there's definitely a lot to what you're saying. We can't let television sitcoms teach another generation of humans how to be humans.
Yeah.
It's turned out so many defective humans already. We've got to stop this madness.
Yep. It, like, even if you screw up everything else about the homeschooling experience, but you nail how to be a resilient, hardworking, respectful human, but maybe they don't read or write or do math, they're still literally going to whoop everybody else in society just because they have that ability to be. They're going to figure out what they can't do well, and they're going to figure out how to do it well just because of those things. And the only person that is qualified enough to do that is you, the mom, and you, the dad, not the specialist in town that, you know, has the credentials to call themselves a teacher. That is mom and dad's job. It always has been, and it always will be. And we as parents have got to go, I'm not hiring this job out anymore. It's just not working. I'm going to take this job back. We're going to turn off the TV. We're going to launch it into the yard, and we're going to sit down. And the first few times, if you do try this and you do like just an absolute overhaul, rip the pistons out and replace everything, like it's going to take some time before your kids really see the benefit of why you're doing what you're doing. But just hold firm and make sure you're always doing it for the right reasons. But they will see. It will take time, but they will see. Oh, wow. Look at me. I really stand out from the bunch. I have qualities that none of these other young men have. Thank you, mom. Thank you, dad. Thank you for disciplining me. Thank you for showing me how to have self-control and how to, you know, have these skills, because you only get one shot and then it's over and you don't get a do-over. So choose wisely.
I think, Brian, just if I can interrupt, I've seen something that you've done with your daughter that I really have admired, that I think even women my age, like you taught her, she can drive a manual vehicle. She's actually helped friends in high school, right? Guy friends in high school, how to jumpstart their cars. And she can do all of these things that I think usually were the male learns to do, but the female's not taught it. And so I think that's something else that I just admire, that I think agriculture and people who know what it's like to be stranded, not wanting to feel that vulnerability. So I think that's also something that I've always struck a chord with if I ever have a daughter, I want her to learn everything that a male would learn too, and not put a gender norm on it. Because if she's stuck somewhere, I don't want her to depend on her cell phone that's out of service or dead or be stranded.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun teaching her to drive a manual. I'm not going to say that it wasn't stressful and I didn't want to tear my hair out, but I'm also not going to say we had to replace the clutch in that vehicle either. I mean, she did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've always looked at it as, you know, as a parent to a young person, it's my job to train them to be a good replacement. Mm-hmm. Like, we need to be training good replacement adults, and the school system does a fantastically poor job of it. You know, what the public school system does do a good job of doing is it makes good tax slaves. It's not good for independent free thinkers, for critical thinkers, or for the people that are on either the far left or the far right side of that bell curve that just fits in a little box of what they want a normal neurotypical student to be. In homeschooling, you don't have that. Like, you're not trying to cater to the middle of that bell curve.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not like there's a grade system. It's not like, well, you're 10 years old, so you're going to be in 6th grade. No, it's you're taught to your ability, and you're taught to the best of your ability to maximize your ability. Not just, you know, trying to train everybody to the same minimum standard. And that brings up something else that I saw the other day about, and I'm not sure how much I believe this, that, you know, the whole public school system was started around the Industrial Revolution because they wanted to get, you know, the kids out of the factories, But B, they also wanted to say, oh, okay, well, if we're going to take all these kids out of the factories, we need to give them the fundamentals to go be a good factory worker. Okay, I can kind of see that. But over the years, it's just got dumbed down so much. It's like, okay, what are we really teaching them anymore? You know, what level of competency to exist in the world does a person have when they graduate high school? Like that high school diploma almost confers nothing. Like you showed up for 12 years and present, you know, like that's a participation trophy almost.
Yep. Now, what skills do most high school kids have when they leave? Like, can you do something? I mean, most valedictorians and salutatorians of their class, they're very brilliant, bright people. But as far as having those not so soft skills, but the workers' trade skills, you don't start finding that till you get to the middle to lower top third.
Exactly. They've taken it out. They've taken music, the wood shop, mechanics, all of those lifelong skills. They've taken them out. It's all about taking tests.
Yep. I mean, the things that the metrics that we have chosen to quantify to value what it is a good student has completely trashed the education system because of the metrics we've chosen to measure just by that alone. Because every human's, natural tendency is to want to chase what it is we value. And when you do that, well, you're going to have to reap the consequences if you value the wrong things. And that's exactly where we are. We don't value that lower to middle third, but that's what carried this nation to make it what it was. Those are the people that literally built the backbone and infrastructure for this whole country. Yet they're completely demoralized. Like, farmers have a stereotype stigma that if you're a dummy, go be a farmer. Man, farmers are some of the most absolute brilliant, bright people that can do things that most of your six-figure income city people could never, ever think of doing. We got to get back to that as fast as possible.
I really worry and wonder if we have enough time. Like
time. Oh man, time is of the essence right now. I don't know if we do. That's why I'm saying now's the time to be building your own systems. That is where we need to be in hyper warp speed for our own. We can't control other people's families and households and what they're doing, but we can definitely control what we are doing with our own kids and our own families and immediate family and circle of influence. That we can control. Everything else, it'll happen as it happens, because we got to make it look like what we're doing. Other people see us doing what they're like, damn, look what Brian's doing. Look what Matt's doing. I think we ought to do what they're doing. And as soon as people go, we're not out there yelling for like the shot's going to kill you or whatever it is. You're trying to like scare people and use fear. We just got to do it to where people look at our lifestyle and us doing the necessary preparations to make sure that we are resilient. That is very infectious and addictive for people. Like, man, I want to make sure that I'm safe. I want to go do what Brian's doing with my kids. That's how this whole thing from the grassroots up. That's the only way. We could yell wolf from the mountaintops all we want to, and the reality is we got to make being an extremely hardworking, resilient, prepared human look fun. And once you do it, it really is. Because everybody that's in our circle of influence comes over here and we have a blast, like every night of the week having people over, but it's all with like-minded prepper, hardworking people that are really in it for the same reasons we are. And more people have joined the bandwagon in the last year and a half, especially. So
I really wish I lived closer.
I'd probably be
over there a lot.
I know. Like, hey, honey, Brian and the family's coming over this Thursday night for dinner. Oh, okay. All right. Sometime we'll just have to do that, make the road trip and just have you guys out here or us out there, either one. I'd love that, man.
That's only a few hours. I mean, I think it's only like 3.5 hours. Nothing but a step for a stepper.
Oh, dude, 3 hours, that ain't no big deal. We'll camp out in your pasture, make it overnight and then head home the next day.
We can make that work. We can definitely make that work.
I like it.
So Matt, it's been great. It's we're coming up on an hour and a half here. You got anything you want to know from me or CK today?
Yeah, CK, I guess I don't know. I haven't got to hang with you much. Tell me just real quick about what it is you do and how you and Brian got the podcasting.
Yeah, so I actually work with Pasture Map, who's sponsoring the podcast, and what Brian and I've worked together for years because he's basically been the main influence of what we've created and what we develop on the software year after year. So him and I have been buddies. When I moved to Kansas, I was like, hey, I'm moving to Kansas, I'm going to come visit you.
That's cool.
And then that's when we decided to do the podcast after COVID hit. We're like, it sucks not going to conferences. So how do we get these conversations going again that we usually have at conferences that we miss so much? And that's kind of how the podcast came to fruition.
That's awesome. This is.
I'm in Idaho now, so I'm nowhere near you guys.
Wow.
So I can't
visit unless. Ways away.
Yeah.
Well, Idaho would probably be a pretty nice place to be, maybe in an apocalyptic event, though. However.
Oh yeah, my father-in-law has a freeze dryer, so we have about a room full of totes of freeze-dried goods that we've been doing for years now. So it's nice to know we have that 30 acres away.
Is he still keeping that freeze dryer going 24/7?
It hasn't since we've been home, just because we had like the 4-H events and people visiting from out of town and stuff, but it usually is. And now that he's done and we're getting peaches that are harvested and apples are coming back and we're starting to harvest the garden, it's coming back. So we're doing a lot of beans and stuff like that too.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Brian, I guess we're just gonna have to, you and I, figure out a time where we can get together and meet up and do something in person sometime. That's my favorite thing. I mean, I like Zoom and all. I love being able to do this with you guys, but I'm an in-person type of guy. So,
I really wish I would have been able to make it over to the Fuller Field School last week. That would have been so much fun. I mean, you were there, of course, Gail and Jess Canad and Candy Thomas, and I know Ethan was there, and just the whole spectrum of all my favorite outlaws in the regenerative agriculture sector. And unfortunately, I had prior commitments. You want to talk about? You want to say something about the Fuller Field School before we slide out of here today?
Sure. Gail Fuller over in Severy, Kansas, every year has a field school, and it really stems around food quality, nutrient density, and what we as farmers can do to connect to a direct customer base type setup with our farms, figuring out what our strengths are. He has a 120 acre regenerative farm there, and incorporates all different kinds of speakers. We had Sarah Keogh, whom I would really encourage you to get her on. She is an absolute master of human nutrition. She spoke to us about so many things that are going on in the COVID world and what's wrong with our immune systems as humans and what industrial food has done to absolutely destroy us at a cellular level. And then Nicole Masters spoke to us about a lot of things we could do as farmers and ranchers to amend the soil in a very inexpensive, non-industrial way, not using your industrial phosphates to really blast forward your soil health program, making your pasture more resilient in drought times and in flood times, keeping as many natural resources on the land as possible. And the best thing about it is spending 2 straight days with just a complete network in person where you can walk around, shake hands, and meet chefs and moms and dads and farmers that all value the same thing you do. So I'd encourage you, Gail's page is called Circle 7 by Fuller Farms. I'd encourage you to add him on Facebook, and he puts it out every year. Usually he only lets about 100 people in. My kids and I, we go every year. I've been for the last 5 years. I'll tell you this, Gail's first field school he had was the year he had Dr. Don Hubert on from the University of Purdue that told us about what glyphosate and GMOs were really doing to our bodies. And that next week I went in, and that was part of the reason why I wanted to raise food. And I quit my job as a school teacher that very next week. That was the last piece that came into play after I saw the homeschool kids and I saw what we were eating as a human society. And I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta do something about this. I can't save these kids as their band director.
Nice.
I got to start raising food. And that was the last piece to be put in place that sent me on a just warp speed track to doing what I do now. So Gale is a great source for people here in Southeast Kansas, and we're very glad that he's around here, and certainly Brian's going to be there next year. My kids and I, we play music and bluegrass over the lunch hour every day for sort of entertainment. So it's a great time.
I have to get Gale on. We definitely have to get Gale Fuller on. I've known that guy forever. I got to get him on this podcast. So you and your kids, you guys played music somewhere else. Kind of cool recently since the field school or Fuller Field School, right?
Yeah, we just we headlined at the what was the name of that stage? It was the Lake Talbot stage out at the Kansas State Fair. And we were down in Cambridge, Kansas the week before, and we played the State Fair last Friday. And this next Saturday night, we're going to be live here at Harmony Hill Farmstead for about 500 people. So my kids have played well over for several thousand people just in 2021. And, as a 9-year-old playing live music for several thousand people is, that's a pretty cool thing that I wish I could have done when I was her age. But, she's the cool part is the people she's got to meet. That is her favorite part of playing music, is meeting people. So
at 9 years old, is that the youngest band member?
That's the oldest. Kennedy is 7. She plays mandolin. And Carson actually is the youngest performer. At 5 years old, he sings God Bless the USA by Lee Greenwood in front. He just walks up to the microphone and steps on the gas and just wails, man. I mean, he loves to sing for people, and he is not afraid to belt it out. So he'll be singing that God Bless the USA next week for Hymns on the Hill. That's his favorite song to do. So because he knows he gets the best crowd reaction.
It's a good song. We all love that song. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's hard not to get into it.
Big old American flag T-shirt and just steps up there with his cowboy hat. Man, he's got all the girls wrapped around his finger. It's pretty cool. So
that's awesome to hear, and I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah, man.
Matt, we really appreciate you joining us today. CK, you got anything on your mind?
No, but sorry, my dog's snoring in the background, so hopefully that didn't pick up.
I haven't noticed it.
Okay, good.
If you did notice it and you listen, go ahead and drop,
tell me, because it's pretty loud.
That's awesome.
Well, Matt, thanks for joining us today, and we'll catch everybody next week.
Yep, appreciate you guys.
Nice to meet you.
Yep, you too. We'll see you guys later.